I would probably take an average 1-2 grinder playing his A game over an average 25-50 grinder playing his C game any day.
You're listening to the Mindset Advantage podcast. Each week, you'll get to peek inside the greatest minds in the game and discover what makes them successful.
Mental toughness separates those that can't handle the stress.
If you're going to treat it like an amateur, you're probably going to have amateur results.
Now here's your host, Elliot Rowe.
Hey, Elliot Rowe here. I'm very excited to announce that for the next few episodes, Stephen Baker will be guest hosting the show. Stephen has experience both as a professional poker player, strategic coach, and now a member of my mindset performance coaching world. I can confidently say that Stephen's one of the world's leading experts in poker mindset and performance, and I'm really excited to hear the conversations he has with some fantastic guests. And with that, here's Stephen.
My guest on today's podcast is Michael Loncar. Michael has been in poker for a long time and has seen many ups and downs. He's an ACR pro now, but he had a long journey with many bumps in the road to get there. Michael has a most positive mindset, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about that, where it's come from, how he developed it, and how you can develop it. So let's get straight to it and listen to what Michael's got to share with us. So Michael, really good to meet you. Welcome.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
It's great to get you on here. And you will be familiar to many of our listeners and viewers, but for everybody, I want you to just really start with a bit of a brief overview on who you are, how you got into poker, because, and I can say this because I clearly am older and look older than you, but despite your youthful demeanor, you've been in poker a long time, pre-Black Friday. So could you just take us a little bit through your story from the beginning and how you got from there to here?
Yeah, it's been a wild roller coaster ride. I'm 37 years old now, and I started playing poker with my dad and my grandpa for quarters and dimes on the kitchen counter when I was about 4 years old. Always loved card games, always loved competitive games. My dad introduced me to online poker for play money, just for fun, when I was 12 years old. And I proceeded to play just out of enjoyment about once a week. From that point on, every weekend I'd get on and play for fun. I always loved the card game. Started playing home games with friends in high school and middle school. And my dad let me play on his Real Balance online poker account when I was 17. And sure enough, right when I turned 18, every time I could save up $50 as a broke high school senior, I'd get $50 online. And my senior year of high school, I turned $50 into $3,000 in 3 weeks. And then I lost it all in one night by playing too high. And then a few months later, got another $100 together, turned the $100 into $3,000 in a few weeks again, lost it all in one night by playing too high. Perfect example of poor bankroll management, which is very necessary to be a successful poker player. I'll never forget that night at 6 a.m, crying. I'm never playing poker again. Oh my gosh, worst feeling ever. And I didn't play poker for one full year until my freshman year of college when I was 19. I was bored. Didn't know anyone at my new school down in California. And I had $250 to my name in my checking account, which was to be used for food and whatnot as a broke college student. And I decided to deposit $200 online. And this was a Friday evening. And now fast forward to Sunday night, I'd probably slept a total of 5 hours for the weekend, hadn't been taking care of myself. My account was up to $5,000 48 hours later. And I was just exhausted. And all of a sudden I'm tilted and not playing good. I start dumping and the balance starts going down quickly. And all of a sudden I look at the balance. It says $3,000. I sat there and luckily collected myself and said, okay, if you would have told me Friday night that I'd have $3,000 40 hours later, I'd be jumping to the moon with excitement. So I cashed it all out, took a week off, got together a very disciplined bankroll management plan, and proceeded to turn that $3,000 into $15,000 in just a few months by the end of my first semester of college. And $15,000 when you're 19 feels like $100K. It feels like a lot more than it is.
Cool. Yeah.
So I dropped out of school, played for a living, and then my mom actually really pretty much begged me to go back to college, continue to play online poker, and get my degree. And I did that, went down to Santa Barbara City College, finished my 2-year degree. And while getting my degree, while I was getting my 2-year degree, I had built up a really nice bankroll. Didn't have one losing month all through college. In fact, I didn't have one losing month through the first 7 years of my poker career. But yeah, I was 21 years old, 2-year degree in place. I had paid for a car with my poker winnings and saved up a nice chunk of money and decided I want to try and play this for a living. And now now I'm 37. I've been doing it ever since. So many stories along the way, ups and downs. Went broke. Went from 100,000 to zero. Just from
well, I was gonna let's talk about some of that, Michael, because obviously you've already touched on some of the hard lessons along the way, and in a sense, look, losing the $3,000 a couple of times when you're at 17, 18, that's not so serious, but there's still lessons. But talk about some of the biggest challenges, the difficult moments, and the lessons that you learned along the way. Just what really stands out in your mind as a really good long-term lesson that anybody could take from your journey?
Yeah, not just in poker, but in life, you have to be extremely disciplined. And especially when you're in a field like poker, you just have to be disciplined. Stick to rules, be smart, save your money. I wish I could go back and tell myself that when I was younger. And I was, there was a period of time where I was making $20,000 a month, but I was spending $10,000 or $12,000 a month as if I'm guaranteed to make $20,000 a month for the rest of my life. And because of the poor spending, I think when I was about 22, 23, I had about $125,000. And the beginning of the downfall was driving to Arizona, had $125,000 in my bank account. And instead of buying, which was right around 2010, the bottom of the real estate market, I could have bought a condo in Phoenix, Arizona for about $40,000, and it's now appreciated to about $200,000. Get that residual income check going. I'm 23 and stupid and not listening to my parents, and I go and buy a Porsche pay cash for it for $45,000, which brings the bank account immediately to 80, and it was all downhill from there. Partying, spending, traveling, just living above my means to the maximum, and that eventually caused me to go absolutely broke. And go to zero, literally go to $0 to the point where I'm fast forward ahead now. I'm 27. I have to move back in with my parents for a little bit to save up. I have to get a friend to back me and split the winnings with me in a $300 game because I can't afford to play in a low stakes game. That was the low point. That was the low point.
Yeah.
That was the absolute low point for sure. And questioning whether I should continue to play poker. But that immediately was dismissed, and I knew that it wasn't the poker; it was the lifestyle, the spending, the lack of discipline, the disregard for money.
And it's really interesting what you say, because like when you say it back, I guess you probably look at it and think, crikey, these lessons, they're so obvious, right?
Yeah, so obvious.
But I see it time and again. I think a lot of people are attracted to poker because of the lifestyle they sometimes see from the outside, but they're seeing the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
In terms of A, the people who achieve that, but B, more to the point, what they had to do to get there.
Yep.
By the time you are living that life and truly living it, not just spending money that you can't really sustain, you've worked and worked and worked, and you've been disciplined.
Yep.
So all the things that people, I'll occasionally have a poker player come to me as a client, and I'll who isn't at that stage where they can truly afford that lifestyle in terms of the freedom, the travel, to do everything they want. There'll be trips to live poker stops, which make sense, but they can't live the life completely.
Yep.
And they'll say, I didn't get into poker to be disciplined. But it's like, hey, guess what? All these people you're aspiring to be, they are disciplined. They may have more freedom now, but they've earned it.
Yes.
Through the discipline. And your story there is just a series of lessons learned the hard way. So that's really valuable. One thing I think has served you well, and I've heard other interviews with you, is your positive mindset, because I think having had those experiences, I think a lot of people would have fallen down and said, right, no, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested about your mindset that you bring. I actually want to sort of have a little bit of a debate with you about one aspect of it, but I think the underlying positivity of your mindset is a real skill, and it's a real asset. But go ahead and just share your mindset that's got you to this point, having had all of these challenges. Because I presume you suffered in Black Friday as well, presumably, because everyone I was there. I lost money.
Yep.
That was another piece of.
Oh man.
That's not something you could control. That's just life variance right there. But
Yes.
tell us a little
Big
bit
time
about
life
your
variance,
mindset.
yes.
Michael.
Yeah, so I've always been called by my friends through my 20s. They always called me Peter Pan, because that's me. I've always been ridiculously positive. I guess a big kid. I believe in magic. I believe in creating magic and magical moments and manifestation. I've realized over the years, when I look at all of my friends, the most successful poker players over a long period of time, not just 5 years, but 10, 15, 20 years, all of them have one thing in common. Exactly what you were just saying. All of them are absolutely ridiculously positive. Ridiculously positive. To the point where you can't even understand it at times. And it's like, how can you be so positive when you've been losing for a year straight? And it's like, it's a self-confidence. It's a firm belief in what you're doing. But yeah, it's an absolute must. And I think it's actually in some ways more important than the actual strategy of the game. Being positive all the time, expecting to win. I think that's a very interesting psychological rabbit hole we could go down for a long time, but we're not going to. But we could talk for an hour just about how it's a very interesting thing to me that 90% of poker players maybe are very negative, complaining, expecting to lose. Oh, God, I always lose. I'm so unlucky. And that does go hand in hand with the statistic that 93% of all poker players in the world will be losing at least one penny in their lifetime when it's all said and done. That's a staggering stat. 93%. Yeah. 93% of poker players are losing poker players, which goes hand in hand with 90% being negative and believing that they're just losing because of bad luck, which is not the case. And that's another whole fork in the road that we could go down as far as that interesting dynamic of every poker player in the world, everybody, including myself, everybody from the worst player that just started playing today to Phil Ivey, the GOAT, everyone, well, maybe not Phil because he's the GOAT, but everybody else believes, everyone believes that they are so much better in poker than they actually are because there is such a luck element. And it's hard to analyze that at times as to how much of this is luck, how much of this is skill. And it's a very interesting thing. Like, when you step on a basketball court, everyone kind of knows, like, that guy's the best. He's the next best. But in poker, you got a poker table and 9 people think they're the best player at the table. It's such an interesting dynamic that makes the game so interesting. But
it also makes the game profitable,
yes,
right? Because if look, if it was chess, if it was pure skill, there's no scope for illusions.
No.
You are going to lose to the better player every time.
Every time.
Having, illness to the point that they can't think straight, you're going to lose. But that illusion, that's the interesting thing. It works both ways. The real fish mentality is the opposite to the negativity. It's a blind optimism. Yep. What I really like about your mindset, and it is something that can be trained, but it's not easy. Maybe it's come naturally to you, is it's a complete well-founded self-belief. But it's not easy to maintain that when you are going through the storm of variance, right? Which everybody goes through. And it's interesting that you came through a number of those challenges where, yes, it was bad bankroll management, but probably you were running bad as well. Maybe, as you said early on, there was a little bit of over-optimism regarding game selection. We've all seen that, right? It used to be legendary back in the day on certainly Poker Stars. Somebody would win the Sunday Million and they go off to the high stakes cash games and all the legs would be waiting for the Sunday Million winner to turn up.
That's right.
But I mean, it's interesting because I have a different take on what you're expressing, but I think it boils down to the same thing. I don't believe in magic, but I do believe in the actual scientific power of positive thinking, and I believe it is a superpower.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I think the ability to be resilient, as you are, is a wonderful thing. Because the other thing about it is, it's not just that it keeps you going in poker; it probably keeps you playing well. The amount of people when they get on a downswing, they get worse. They become tighter, more passive, and so they actually adjust their game. I think their subconscious is effectively trying to adjust their game to actually be better, but they become worse.
That couldn't be more true. In fact, right when you're saying that, a couple times when I went broke and I had, close to broke, and I felt the pressure of like, okay, I've got my last $3,000 here. I'm buying for $500. I have to win. You definitely alter some strategies based on your bankroll for sure, and that extra pressure, and it's a very tough thing to do. For sure, it's very tough.
I mean, the difficulty in all of this is that there is a rational element, isn't there? Which is, hey, I'm on a downswing. I need to look at my bankroll. And sometimes I do have to move down in stakes.
Yeah.
And that's not being negative. It's just being rational. It's just making sure I'm committing the right amount of resources to make sure I don't run an unreasonable risk of ruin. But equally, that's not the same thing as saying, woe is me. I'm not playing well. I'm not good enough. Whereas that really struck me, having listened to more than one of your interviews, that you managed to keep hold of that self-belief throughout all of this.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest traps in poker is there's just so much pride and ego. There's so much pride and ego. It is very hard at times to move down in stakes, like you said. Like, things aren't going well, whether I'm going through a downswing in poker or my life bankroll just going down because I'm spending too much or have too many expenses. You have to be disciplined and set rules and move down when you need to. And it actually feels really good, like an accomplishment, when a number of times in my poker career I've been forced to move down in stakes, get my bankroll and make it a goal. Okay, I'm going to get my bankroll back to 15,000 at this level, and I'm going to make sure I do that to take no chance here of losing my bankroll, and then get it back up there. Okay, I'm here, and now I can go back to the bigger profitable games. And it's but yeah, it's tough, man. Poker's tough. It's definitely not an easy profession, to say the least. And I actually think to myself all the time, I'm 37 right now. When I was 29, I was living with a friend in Washington, D.C., and he was actually letting me stay with him and paying for everything to coach him in the game. And he said to me, it's so funny when he said this comment to me during the summertime, and I didn't think anything of it at the time. And now I think about it all the time. And he said to me, Michael, you're not going to be a millionaire like you should be until you meet a great woman that grounds you and fills the gaps in your life that you need filled. And I just didn't think anything of that at all. Like, yeah. And exactly 1 year later, I met my now wife, and it's been the greatest thing ever. And the greatest part of this story is that I met her on St. Patrick's Day of 2017 with a bankroll of $8,000. Didn't have a car, was driving Uber everywhere, had $8,000, was living at a buddy's place for free, my best friend. And my wife at the time had two boys that were 5 and 7. And they've obviously become my boys now. But going back to when we first met, the fact that she had so much belief in me to say, yes, you are a professional poker player with no real job, no assets, and I'm trusting you to be the man of this family and take care of my boys and be a father to my boys and be my husband forever. I mean, she just loved me. And then fast forward 7 months later, I just moved in with her. I proposed. I had $3,000 to my name. Poker was not going well, and I was actually being very disciplined, but I was just going through a downswing. My wife and me. It's funny. One day I was like, okay, I got $3,000 left. I'm going to go buy into this $500 game and run it up. And she said, no, you're not. No, you're not. You've got $3,000. That means you've got enough to tuck away and be good for the next few months. So you need to figure out another way to make some money right now. So I did poker coaching exclusively for about 5 weeks, which helped get my bankroll from 3K to 8K. And then I started playing cash games with such a desire and such a, probably the most burning like desire ever to win, because now I'm not winning for me, I'm winning for my family now. And I built my bankroll back up to $25,000 in less than 2 months. And then January of 2018, on my laptop, in my bed with my wife, I took first place in a $265 tournament on ACR. For almost 4,000 players, I took first place for $138,000. So I went from proposing to my wife with $3,000 and her saying, yes, I love you and I want to marry you no matter what. Money doesn't matter. That'll take care of itself. I just love you for you and want you to be, the man of this family. And just literally 4 months later, I now have about $165,000 and the biggest bankroll I've ever had in my life. And obviously it was just a dream come true to have met my dream woman at, I think this is kind of a fairy tale dream, really. It's, I meet my dream woman with no money. She, proves to me, obviously, she loves me for me, and money's nothing to do with it. And then boom, 4 months later, I've got a healthy amount of money, and now I've got the grounding of her to help me manage my money off of the poker felt, which is always what I needed. And we've lived happily ever after. It's been the best 7 years of my life now, and we actually got married a year later, got pregnant with our third boy, Luke, on our honeymoon, and now we've got a full house, 3 boys, and life is good.
Yeah, I can definitely see why you believe in magic. To be fair, it's that life has worked out very well. And in fairness, there are real things in there as well, which is worth thinking about for people. I mean, number one, I think, look, for some people, it's interesting. I've had this discussion with a couple of poker players, because I think it's real sense of vision of what you want your life to look like is really important.
Yes.
And, for example, I mean, there's a great book by Stephen Kotler from the Flow Research Collective, and it's all about flow psychology and achieving flow states. And interestingly, it starts from the viewpoint of have a vision. Now, he's talking there maybe about a vision of what you do with your project. It might change the world, change humanity. But I think also a vision of where people fit into your life is important, because I think some poker players get to the point where it's like, well, wait a minute, I've won some big prizes, and there's almost a sense of emptiness of, well, okay, what's it all for? But when you find your partner, your life partner like you have, then there's a sense of, hey, this is all lining up. I share it with this person. When I go to the tables and I've already made a certain amount of money, hey, it makes sense still, because I want to achieve more, not just for me, but for them. And I think actually it's also valuable to have a partner who truly understands poker and accepts you as a poker player. That is not always the case.
That's huge. Oh, yeah, definitely not. Yeah, absolutely. No, it takes a certain type of woman to be married to a poker player. There's no question about it. And that it was such a match made in heaven for me and my wife. She's loved poker her whole life. Her whole family is a big poker family. They've had poker nights on a monthly basis her whole life. So definitely a match made in heaven. And just right now, thinking about what and going off of what you're saying, I'm not sure I've actually even told this story ever on a podcast, but talking about magic and manifestation and whatever you want to call it. The very first time I went broke, when I was 27, I had gone from $100,000 plus to absolute. When I say broke, I mean broke. I mean, I had to borrow money from my parents to eat food. That's how broke I was. And I wasn't willing to get a job. Because I was going to make it in poker, and I was set on it. And that led to a few months of just not even doing anything, just trying to figure out how to, get stuff going again. But 27 years old, got a backer in place down at my parents' area down in Palm Springs. made 10 grand over a few months. So I gave my back to the 5K. I've got 5K again. And then I came back up to Sacramento and I took a shot. I took a shot and bought into a $500 tournament, my first live tournament, the first live tournament of my life. I'd always been an online sit-and-go player and a live cash game player. I'd never played a big field tournament that's tracked on Hendon Mob at a casino. And in some ways, that will always go down as the laptop win of my wife would definitely the most special magical run ever. But probably the most special live win that I've ever had was when I came back to Sacramento with 5K after grinding out of the hole, bought into my first live tournament ever for $500. That tournament specific, I'll never forget. I told my friends, I said, nobody wants to win this tournament, not even 1/100th as much as I want it. And I felt like I was in the Matrix that tournament. It's the only tournament of my life where I just I was watching everyone so intently and I wanted to win so badly. I manifested that win and I took first place in that tournament for $38,000, my very first poker tournament ever. And there was something very magical about that because I knew I was going to win that tournament before I won, which doesn't sound believable, but I really did have a feeling in my bones that I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to manifest this. I'm going to give everything I have into the universe and make this happen. And like you said, I believe that's a superpower. It's something that's not talked about enough.
It is. It is. I mean, if you've got that unshakable self-belief, number one, it will help you through the days where actually, even if you go into the tournament thinking you're going to do well and you don't, you come back the next day, you come again.
Yep.
But it will help you within a tournament, right? And
Yep.
it will help you. You're a cash game player because there will be inevitable bumps. But if you have that unshakable, and as it turns out, well-founded belief, that's pretty important. You know, if you're not in that 93%,
Yep.
you know, and you've got enough of a data point to say, hey, no, wait a minute, I can believe in myself. This is just variance. Go with it. But it's easier said than done, even if you're in that 7%,
Yeah.
you know, to actually keep that mindset. I'd like to just ask you a little bit about, you know, is that something you've consciously cultivated, this mindset? Have you gone and built it? How have you built it? Share that with everybody, because I, as I say, having said it's a superpower, let's see if it can be. I believe it can be built, but I'd be interested to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's, you know, just like anything, repetitions, routines. I mean, a bodybuilder goes to the gym 5 days a week and works out his muscles for years and years, and he's going to get big, strong muscles that are there for a long, long time, and they're not going to go away even when he stops. Such is the same with the brain. Such is the same with mindset and mentality. You can train your mind to become stronger, and I give all of my thanks and praise to my dad from the age of 4 years old, dropping off my backpack in the house every single day until I was 18 years old, going right out to the basketball court, my dad rebounding for me for hours and hours and hours, and just nonstop drilling in my head. Expect the swish. The ball's going in. It got to the point where when I'm shooting with my dad, I'm shocked when the ball doesn't go in because I'm picturing it going in the hoop. And, you know, my dad gave me so much confidence, life confidence, that I've carried with me into every area of my life from those sessions on the basketball court. Just constant positivity, constant putting it in my head to expect the ball to go in, expect to win, expect good things, make it happen, believe. And that carried over to everything else in my life and now in poker. And shout out to my dad.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, everybody's heard that phrase, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
And actually what you say is backed with science. You know, there was a very famous, well, within my field, within the coaching field, there's a very famous study by Stanford University, Dr. David Spiegel, about the benefits of hypnotherapy. And we actually see exactly what you're saying, that you can actually, on brain scans now, modern science gives us access to brain scans, we can see the effects of hypnotherapy rewiring neural pathways in the same way as you said, the bodybuilder turns up, builds muscle. You can see the brain developing in a positive way. And, you know, this is why you don't have to give up on the idea of a certain mindset or certain patterns of behavior. You can it's called neuroplasticity. It's something that didn't used to be accepted, that we all thought we had character traits and we were stuck with them. It's just not true. You can rewire it. And it's great that you are a living testimony to that actual ability to build that mindset. And as you say, it's very fortunate that you had your dad as that kind of role model, mentor. Not everybody has that, but I would say that, it can be built even from now, even if you didn't get that head start. I'd just like you to maybe share with us, Michael, some more we are the Mindset Advantage podcast, and so we don't really dig so much into the technical aspects of the game as such, but I'm interested in what other non-technical aspects have you used to improve your performance through all these years? The intangibles, if you like.
Yeah, that's a great question. So basically, I think the number one mistake that young aspiring poker pros do is they put out goals of, I'm going to play 50 hours this week, or I'm going to play 200 hours this month. I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to play every day. That's the number one thing in poker that you shouldn't do. And I think this also translates to other professions, is going too hard and going nonstop, even when you quote unquote don't feel like it. That's not a good thing to do. In fact, that's the number one thing not to do. There's been a number of pros here in Sacramento who have asked me for words of advice in the beginnings of their poker career, and that's probably the number one thing. The number one problem that they do is they're setting these unrealistic goals of hours played, days played, never days off. Breaks are probably the most important part of being a poker player, listening to yourself. I've had periods where I didn't play for 2 or 3 weeks, and I didn't know that it was going to be a 2 or 3 week break, but I knew that I needed a break. I was mentally exhausted. I was starting to, as any poker player or any human being does, when times are difficult, you get into a negative mindset. You're expecting to lose, and when you catch some self-awareness and realization of like, oh wow, I just got it in with aces as an 82% favorite, and I was expecting to lose. That's how bad my mindset is right now. Time for a break. How long of a break? Only you can figure that out. It might be 2 days, it might be 2 weeks, but you need to do other things. Do some meditation. Start getting that positive flow going again. Start getting that positive expectation going again, and then get back in the game. I think that's a big thing for any profession. Don't get burnt out. Take breaks. Do other things. Have good balance. And in poker specifically, don't start playing again until you really feel in your bones that you're going to start winning again. It's so important. It's so important to pace yourself and take breaks and do other things. Just like, it's like you can relate this to anything, like NBA players. It's probably not the best thing when you win the championship to go start training for the next season the very next day. Take a break.
Exactly.
Take a break, reassess, do some meditation, make a mental plan for the next season, take some time off, do some traveling, spend some time with your family, do some other hobbies. And then when you get back into the training for the next season, you're really fresh. You're so ready to go hard. And your day one in a month will be 10 times more valuable and stronger than your day one as if you didn't take any time off. And obviously, obviously that can translate to any profession or any.
Absolutely. I mean, I love what you're saying here. And the interesting thing is, it comes again from a place of positivity and self-belief, because I think what sometimes people do in a downswing is they say, I've got to get out of it fast.
Yes.
And that almost comes from a place of, can I get out of it? I want to scramble out of the quicksand. And that's not the way to get out of the quicksand. What you have to do is actually say, no, I've got this. This is a downswing. Mm-hmm. Hopefully we're talking about somebody who has got enough data to say, I am not in the 93%. Now just take your time. I'm going to let my quality take its course, bring me out of it. But I see this very often, that then there becomes almost it seems like a virtuous thing in that moment. I'm going to get myself out of this. I'm going to fight harder. But sometimes it's like turning your car's stuck in mud, putting it into the wrong gear and trying to move too fast out of the mud. Sometimes you just got to understand what the right way to move again.
And
sometimes that's slower.
And exactly what you're saying also translates to every poker player on a day-to-day basis. When I go to the casino and play in a cash game, so, there's tournaments where you buy in and you're basically in a cage and you can't leave the tournament until you're out of the tournament. But a cash game, every chip on the table is representative of a dollar, and you can leave whenever you want. You can play for 30 minutes or 30 hours and take breaks whenever you want. So what you just said translates exactly to probably the biggest downfall of every poker player out there. You go to a casino, in the first couple of hours, everything's not going your way. You're getting unlucky in hands. Everyone knows you're just getting unlucky and you're losing. Sometimes I'll go to the casino and I'm expecting to go play an 8-hour session, but on the rare occasion, or sometimes basically in the first hour or two, everything's not going my way. Everything's off. I'm getting unlucky in a bunch of hands. That right there, that moment where you're down quite a bit right away, things don't feel right. As a pro, that's where you say, I'm done. It's not my day. I'm racking up. I'm going home, and I'm going to come back on another day when things are going good. That right there is the number one thing that almost all poker players do wrong. Oh no, I'm stuck 1,000. I'm not leaving here until I get up. And now you're chasing the losses, which usually leads to bigger losses, which leads to tilt, which leads to bad play, which leads to not playing the way you should optimally. It's the exact opposite then on the other side too. When you go there and you're really hot in the first 2 hours and you're winning, most players will then say, oh my gosh, I'm up so much, I'm out of here. I just made 2,000 in the first 2 hours, I'm out of here. No, this is when you play for the 8-hour session. When you're winning and you're feeling good and things are going away, that's when you play the long session. And you always need to adjust to your situation. And this obviously translates to a number of different fields. When things are going your way and you're feeling good and you're winning, you keep going. And when things aren't going your way, that's when you hit the brakes, take a break, don't chase your losses. It's not your day. And it's such a tough psychological thing to do, especially when you sought out to go play at the casino for a long period of time and things aren't going your way right away. And there's lots of bad players, but you're feeling kind of tilted and not even keel. That's when you have to have that self-awareness and say, okay, it's not my day. I'm not going to chase my losses. I'll come back tomorrow. Everyone does it the exact opposite. Everyone does it the opposite. So it's such an important thing.
Yeah, no, you're right. It works on that sort of micro day-to-day level, session-to-session level. And of course, like a day, who cares if you're down that day? It's just an arbitrary time frame.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything. Look at your overall graph. And if your overall graph says you are winning, then fine, trust yourself. I think the other thing that happens, and I do see this sometimes with some of the younger players coming through poker, they say, I'm going to work like crazy for 5 years and make all the money. And it doesn't work like that. And I think there's almost, a lack of self-belief that you can run a marathon, because that's the truth. You are running a marathon. It makes no sense to start at the starting line of a marathon and say, well, the best way to get this done is to do it damn fast. I'm going to sprint. Because you're not going to make it to the end. And you need to build sustainable practices. And what you said earlier is true. I mean, in terms of, again, the science behind this, to get into flow state, you need to have recovery.
Yep.
And recovery doesn't mean watching another poker video or somebody's stream. It means sleep. It means sometimes complete rest, going and having a sauna. These things will get the dopamine back in your brain, keep you motivated, get you into those flow states again.
Yes.
But yeah, that ability to step back and the self-awareness that comes with that of, I'm not feeling my best today, and that's not going to work out well. Let's step back. That again is another great skill, hugely underrated soft skill. Fantastic. So tell us about, your key routines, Michael. Again, you've honed these over a long period of time. I don't know, maybe you're going to play a live tournament online. Just give us an idea of what kind of things are in there for you.
So still to this day, before I get on and play online or before I go play live at a tournament, I just take 60 seconds. I just take 1 minute. I get into a room or in my car where there's no noise, turn off everything, turn my phone off, shut the music off, And I just sit there and sometimes close my eyes, sometimes I don't, but I literally just try and picture myself winning. Picture myself winning every coin flip, even though I'm not going to, but I'm trying to manifest, I'm trying to envision exactly what I want to happen, exactly what's going to happen over the next number of hours or for the remainder of the day, and just really try and get dialed in. And again, I can't talk about enough about the power of manifestation. I believe in it. I believe in it so wholeheartedly, and I think it's probably the number one thing in the world that's not talked about enough. The power that we hold as human beings to make things happen when we want them to. It's such an interesting thing. Yeah, just I think it's so I think it's so important to just take 30 seconds or 1 minute every single time before you play poker and just envision yourself winning, envision things going your way. And obviously this can translate to absolutely anything, any game you're playing, any competition you're in, anything you're going to do. I think it's important to just take a second, envision what you want to happen, envision the ideal situation, and put that out in the universe and try and make it happen. It's so important.
I mean, what I really like about that is the fact that your pre-game warm-up, I mean, sometimes I'll have clients and we talk about pre-game warm-ups, and I'm a great believer in keeping it light. There's some people almost as a comfort blanket want to study for 2 hours before playing, and I don't think that's the way to do it. It's almost like, you wouldn't see a professional athlete put in a 2-hour training session right before they're going to play. They're going to save their energy, but they are going to warm up. And I think what you've just described is a nice abbreviated version of the mental warm-up, because what you're doing is intention setting.
Yes.
You're saying, I am setting my intention for this game, and that is your way of reinforcing your positivity. Something I'd say to a player might be, I want you to visualize yourself. Actually, funny enough, almost the opposite, but the result is the same. Visualize yourself losing a flip, getting coolered, but visualize yourself responding to that the way you want to respond to it. Visualize yourself just saying, okay, this is part of the game. I'm going to anticipate the bad beat. I'm going to anticipate the cooler, but I am going to show my professionalism by being ready for that. And I'm going to play my reduced stack as well as anybody can ever play that reduced stack. And that is an edge, right? We all look good when the sun's shining. But that ability to just say, hey, it doesn't matter. I'm going to play my stack, which has gone from 50 down to 5. I'm going to play that 5 big blind stack as well as any human being can play it. That is my mindset. And that doesn't, as you say, that you can do that anywhere. Close your eyes, visualize yourself, meeting the challenge. That you are far more likely to actually bring your best self to that situation than if you just rock up at the table with no preparation. So I would just say to anybody, Michael's just given you a nice short hack there to do a pre-session warm-up. So sometimes when I hear people say, I don't have time for a pre-session warm-up,
don't say that.
I'm going to call bullshit on that. It's just not true, right?
My favorite saying in life, and it always has been since I was a kid, if you truly love something, you will always find time for it. It's just so true.
Exactly.
You can always find time for anything.
Yeah. And by the way, what you've said there is and again, I've given somebody another way of framing that visualization, but it's so short. You can do it even in an online break. We don't get much time in online breaks. Let's be honest with you. We have to attend to our physical needs normally. Mm-hmm. But if you want to just correct yourself and just say, hey, wait a minute, this is important. Let me just now spend 30 seconds just seeing myself, how I want to be. What is the version of me I want to bring to this next hour? That has a real value. And you're in a sense, you're reinforcing in that moment all of that mental training you did right all the way back to your dad.
Yep. And going off of what you said a few minutes ago, obviously when I meditate before a session, I'm envisioning winning and I'm expecting the win. But I also do say to myself exactly what you said, which is so important, because you can't just obviously, it's unrealistic to just win every hand and everything's going your way, and that's not the case in anything, let alone poker. And what you said there is so valuable. not only should you manifest positive things and expectations and what you want, but you also need to mentally prepare yourself for if there's a bump in the road on this tournament and if there's a period where things aren't going my way, I'm going to stay focused. I'm going to stay even keeled. I'm going to act professional, and I'm going to turn it around and stay dialed in and deal with the situation, whatever that is, to the best of my ability, and try and make the best of it no matter what happens. That's so important what you said right there. It's so important.
Yeah, I mean, we've all seen it, haven't we? The guy at the table who has maybe some bad luck, and then you just know that within half a dozen hands they're out of here.
Yep.
And then you know, it's interesting. A few weeks ago, I was interviewing on this podcast Martin Jacobson, won the 2014 main event, 7 big blinds on the final table, goes on to win it. That clearly wasn't his mindset. You know, his mindset was, I'm going to work this 7 big blind stack. And, you know, we've all heard the chip in a chair stories, but we see them enough to realize that there is real value. You know.
Of course, yeah. No, the biggest win of my life, that $138,000 win that I talked about earlier. 17 players left in that tournament. I had 3.5 big blinds, by far the shortest stack. Stayed focused, made it happen. Never, you know, that's so important to never give up. Never give up. Don't try, you know, just because you're on the brink of elimination or on the brink of defeat, just continue to give everything you can and stay focused and make the best decisions. And yeah, you can always turn it around in life.
Advice here, Michael.
Yeah.
And I wish we could sort of bottle a little bit of all that you've managed to build into your mindset and sell it, because that would be the most valuable resource out there. But I just want to talk about really the future. Tell us a little bit about how you view the future. What's your vision now, your goals going forwards?
So I actually just had the luxury of winning. So I'm an ACR Team Pro, and every few months we have an ACR Team Pro Challenge where we compete against each other in a number of different categories, which usually consist of online tournament results over the course of a month, social media content, which is judged by a panel, including Chris Moneymaker and other top employees at ACR. And then we finish the challenge at the end of the month with a heads-up tournament. And the 2 pros that have the most points between all categories win a massive $110,000 package for the Triton High Roller Series, which is the most prestigious live tournament series in the world right now, that takes turns going to different exotic locations in mainly in Europe and Asia. And so I won the last challenge. So 2 weeks ago, I went to Monaco with my wife, and flight and hotel paid for by ACR. And I was awarded with a $110,000 in buy-ins for the Triton High Roller Series. And luckily, Phil Nagy, always the ACR CEO, always offers us to sell half of those buy-ins to him at no markup if we want. So I'm no fool. I'm aware I'm good, but I'm also aware of the fact I'm only going to be playing in 3 different tournaments against the absolute best of the best of the best in the world. So I chose the option to sell 50% of those buy-ins to Phil, put $55,000 in my pocket. No matter what happens, I'm plus $55K for this. And now I've got 50% of myself in these massive tournaments. And unfortunately, I didn't cash any. It was a heartbreaker, the $50,000 buy-in. I finished 2 from the money, which was devastation to the max. I mean, just absolutely devastating. I cried for a couple of days, like actual tears, because it was devastating. And I learned so much from that trip, and just a really hyper observing Phil Ivey and Chidwick and all of these top players on a day-to-day basis, conversing with them, watching them at the table. It was such a next level experience. It was just the elite of the elite in this, intimate atmosphere on such a grand stage, and definitely the most beautiful poker room I'll ever play in my entire life, with the view of Monaco right on the water, retractable roof. I mean, it was just a dream come true, and it really gave me so much motivation to get to that level as soon as I can, to get to the point where I am a regular on the Triton High Roller Series. The buy-ins during those series run from usually about 15 or 25K on the low end of tournaments in the series to $200,000 and sometimes even $1 million on the high end. And if I can just get to the point where I'm a regular playing the quote unquote low stakes Triton events, which is mega high stakes, 25K, 30K buy-ins, that's where I want to be. I want to be in that elite group. I want to be at the point where I'm playing for massive money. So that's a personal goal of mine, to get to that point. But really, in reality, as long as I'm continuing to be able to just provide for my family and give them a good life and, be able to take care of my kids and give them the things they need and want, and my wife, and, then life is good and everything else is gravy. But that is a personal goal of mine, to get to that point of being a regular on the Triton series, being at the top of the top level on a consistent basis. And now I've got my work cut out for me. I need to obviously build the bankroll much higher and continue to grind and continue to stay in my routine and work hard and study and do all the things that are necessary to get to that level. And it's just going to take time, but I'll definitely get there in time.
Yeah, I think if your career's shown anything, I think that's a well-founded belief, and it's certainly one you will hold.
Yes.
And it's great to hear. And by the way, I don't think the 18-year-old version of you would have known the lesson, but you clearly learned the lesson. You held on to 55K of your very well-earned buy-in. So yeah, I'm sure it'll happen again. And my understanding is that challenge within the ACR Pros is ongoing again. So you'll get presumably you get to fight for that on an ongoing basis, and get to the point hopefully where your winnings from those tournaments just gets you into the next one and the next one and the next one.
Yeah, but it just takes one. It just takes one massive one, and that's probably my biggest goal, is to win a 7-digit win. That's kind of my. Yeah. I got the 6-digit win. Now I want to get the 7-digit win. That's it'll happen. It's just a matter of time and a matter of when and where. And I do have to say, shout out to Phil Nagy, the ACR CEO, for allowing us to compete and go after these Triton events. He went and experienced the Triton series for the first time a couple years ago, and it's a magical vibe. It's a magical experience. It's a next level experience. And after he experienced it, he wanted to share that experience with others. And now, just over the last year, there's been Ebony Kenny, who's an ACR Team Pro, who won well over $1 million in one of the series. There's been 2 or 3 stormers, ACR stormers, that have gone out and won. 3 guys that have won between $300,000 and $800,000 in one tournament from these challenges. So he's making dreams come true, and he's even for those of us that go out like I did and didn't cash anything on the tournament side of things, just to have the experience of being in this little bubble with the absolute best in the world in these extravagant locations. I mean, it's just such a life experience. It's truly a blessing, and I just want to thank Phil again for the opportunity. It's amazing. It's a dream come true to play against Phil Ivey and all the best in the world. And I've never been starstruck like I was with Phil Ivey. He's something else, man. It was amazing meeting him and talking to him, and he was such a nice guy, and he's just so cool, man. Just such a cool guy. So yeah.
Well, I wish you the best. I think everybody feels your positivity when they watch this, listen to this, and I'm sure that will drive you on to achieve your goals. Michael, I just want to thank you generally for being so generous with your time and thoughts. I think there's a huge amount we can learn. And, as I said before, your positivity is something that you've consciously cultivated and has been cultivated, but I do believe it is something that can be cultivated. And I'm feeling positive just talking to you. Thank you so much for sharing your time, and all the very best. And I'm looking forward to watching you from the virtual rail and willing you on to win that 7-figure sum and go on from there.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
again,
you so
Michael.
much. I just have to say one last thing. I don't think I've ever said this on a podcast. Just listening to what you just said. If you really, I think it's important to take a minute, and every single one of you watching this podcast, take a minute, take 20 minutes, sit down, get a piece of paper and a pen, and write down the most important things that you want in your life. Because another thing that I've always wanted my entire life was to meet the one. I wanted to meet a woman that made me not look at other women, that made me feel complete and whole and loved. And I've always wanted that. I've always wanted a partner, a best friend. And I was always very picky with getting into serious relationships because of it, because I feel like right away you know or you don't know if someone's the one. And I wanted that so badly, and I found it. And I think it's just so important to take some time, figure out what are the most important things that you want in your life that you don't have already. And obviously there isn't a lot of training or anything you can do to specifically meet the one, if you will. But if you put that out there and expect it, and I think more importantly, if you're patient, be patient for the things you want and wait for those right moments, and they will come. And yeah, I'll leave you with that. Thank you so much for having me on today, man.
No, that's fantastic. That's fantastic, Michael. And thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me on, man. Really appreciate it. It was fun.
So thanks again to Michael for sharing his time and thoughts. That positive mindset, which we've heard from Michael, may seem like something which he's just fortunate with, but I can say through coaching, you're able to develop it. And just listening to some of Michael's approaches is definitely going to be of value to you if you want to make your way in poker. So thanks again also to you for joining us again on the Mindset Advantage podcast. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Mindset Advantage podcast. To get future episodes delivered to you automatically, make sure to subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcasting service. To get any resources mentioned in the episode or to listen to past shows, visit pokermindcoach.com/TMA podcast. Thanks for listening.